So the next person I'm going to introduce you to, it's so interesting. I vividly remember so many things about my time with Liz. She's one of my favorite people to talk to, in part because I just love the way she operates. Liz is a great example of someone who's willing to have an idea about something and then just go and run with it and see what happens. She's got a background that ranges from being a BBC reporter to running a coaching and training in schools to all kinds of things, and we're going to hear all about it. So please unmute yourselves and put your hands together and give a big round of applause to the very wonderful Liz Scott. Welcome, Liz.
Oh, thank you very much. That's lovely.
You're very, very welcome, and thank you for joining us. And I'm going to just spotlight you and me so everyone can see us. And Liz, what would be great is if you could just say a little bit about yourself, about what you're up to these days, and then tell a little bit about what first sparked your interest in these principles and your journey to having your own business and everything that you're doing now.
Okay, well, it would be great if this is, I know it's going to be a conversation, so it would just be great for you to chip in with questions, because I can just talk and talk when I get going.
I want you to try and imagine me not interrupting and chipping in with questions, and once you see how unlikely that is.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what I'm up to these days, because I'm really excited about what we're up to these days. Like you say, I've been had a career, or started my career as in the BBC as a radio reporter and producer, and I worked for the BBC for 12 years. And then I started my own coaching business. Whilst I was a reporter, I trained part-time, well, in my part-time as a counsellor and then as a coach. I was always very curious about things psychological. And what I did with the BBC is I started to reduce my hours at the BBC. And the BBC was a great employer, actually, enabling me to do this and start dabbling in a coaching business on the side. And eventually I left the BBC because I wanted to just try my own business. And that's what I've been doing since, I think I left 2009, something like that. I left the BBC.
Just to interrupt, Liz, yeah. Funnily enough, when I started my first business, so I quit my job in 1998 and set up as a contractor. So I was still doing the same stuff, still being a project manager for a couple of years while going on courses and learning the stuff I needed to learn to do the new thing, the coaching and training and that sort of thing. And then in my last year of having a job, so to speak, I started, the first couple of months, I downed my time from 5 days a week to 4 days a week, and then to 3 days a week, and then to 2 days a week, and by the end of the year, I was just doing 1 day a week on my old project management work and spending all the rest of the time in my business. So my transition was very similar to yours in that respect.
Yeah, and that, that's very much me. I'm quite, say, cautious, but I don't make big jumps. I like to just kind of get a feel if something's right. Yeah. And, it boiled down to, I remember at the BBC, I went to my boss. I just had 6 months off as a sabbatical and they'd kept the job open. And then I thought, I don't really want to work 3 days a week. I'm going to come back and ask if I can just work 1 day a week. And I did that. And he said, do you know what? We can't offer you 1 day a week. It's got to be 3 days a week. And I was like, okay, it's time to go. So that was kind of, the way it worked. But it was great. Nice. And I work with my husband, Stu, and we do a lot of work and have done a lot of coaching work. We seem to get drawn very much into education and schools. And that was for quite a long period of time. That's been something we've done a lot of, even before I came across the Inside Out Understanding. And I remember coming across the 3 principles. That's how I heard about the Inside Out Understanding with a fellow coach. And I was having one of these conversations with a group of coaches, one of my favorite kinds of conversations. And it was always about, what books are you reading? And what are you doing now? And So this was probably back in 2012, 2013. And I remember one of these coaches said, oh, I've come across the 3 principles. And I was like, what? What are the 3 principles? I thought I knew everything that was going on, and I'd done most of the courses and read most of the books. And so I thought, oh, what book are you reading? And I thought, I'll read that book. Then I also have done the 3 principles, and I too can put that in my coaching toolbox and carry on my merry way. And it was just one of those things that I read the book, and there was something there that resonated, but I couldn't quite grasp. One of my clients...
That was the same for me, Liz.
Was it?
Yeah, the first principles book I read. So I first read The Missing Link like 20 years ago, and I was like, yeah, that's shit. It's actually one of my favorite books now. But at the time, it just looked, I was toggling between, I already know this, and it's more complicated than that. And that was it. But the first book that I actually read and tried to get something from it was Somebody Should Have Told Us by Jack Pransky. And I was toggling between, this is shit, and there's something here.
That was my book. Here. That was the book.
Yeah,
there
yeah. So,
yeah. It was exactly that. And I couldn't quite, like you get an earworm for a tune that doesn't quite go out of your head ever. And it's like, oh, there's something here, and I can't quite work it out. And I remember one of my clients latterly has said, it's a little bit like trying to grasp smoke, that kind of like, I can't quite get it. Like here, but you get it here. And so I just started watching YouTube videos and reading books and going on courses. And I remember I was on this retreat, and this was probably the first insight that around my business that really landed for me. I was on this retreat trying to work out what this thing was called the 3 principles. And something inside me just kind of went, oh, your whole business is going to shift to this. Like I kind of knew it deeply. And then it was almost like this tsunami of thought came in, like, oh, shit. I can't do that. What did my clients say? What will Stuart say? I had to change my website. I've only had my website done. I don't even know this stuff. I don't know how to explain it to anybody. It was almost like, but I knew it. And I've got to say, probably that's been the best example of how my understanding and how it's integrated within my business is how it's happened. Because in the past, I guess before I came across the 3 principles, I was almost like, oh, that's changed. I need to change it now. Like things need to change now. But this was more of a seeping. And what I noticed is that, sure enough, my whole business has changed. But it probably took 5 years, over a period of 5 years. And I'd find myself turning, we used to train leaders in education, in coaching skills. That was one of the things we did. And I remember over time, we'd share things, and more things I go, do you know what? This doesn't make sense sharing this anymore, because I don't kind of see this like this way anymore. So more and more things would just fall away. And we just found ourselves, and Stu also is very deeply involved in the Inside Understanding. We just found ourselves sharing things very differently. And it was a very organic and natural process. There was no angst involved.
It's so interesting you say that, Liz. My journey in that respect has been very, very similar. And I noticed that when I came to the understanding, there were a lot of people almost, or I may have imagined all these people, but it seemed like the message I was getting was that I needed to throw everything I was doing out and start from scratch and that sort of thing. And that just didn't make any sense to me. I was kind of like, I'm going to keep doing the things that make sense until such time as they don't make sense. And I'll just trust that that'll work. And that's worked out great. And it's so interesting. I was teaching a workshop with Garrett Kramer, who you know well, and Michael Neal and me. So it was the 3 of us doing a 3-hander out in New York and New Jersey. And what I noticed, we had all these coaches and people with their own businesses and that sort of thing. And they were listening to the 3 of us and then going, oh, I need to change my website. I need to change this. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, me and Garrett and Michael still have stuff up on our websites that we no longer get behind, but we haven't got around to changing it. Like, you don't have to get it perfect before you can get going. Plus, me and Garrett and Michael, while we have a shared kind of heart to what we do, we all talk about it differently and disagree with each other vehemently about things and all that sort of stuff. And it's fine. You don't have to be like towing a party line or doing it the right way. You just need to do what makes sense to you.
And that's really interesting too, because I've come from maybe my background has been very much like I needed to get it right. If I was going to share something, I needed to know it. I needed to be the expert. I needed to be respected. And, you know, you can't be the expert in sharing something that is deeply an embodied experience that is impossible to put into words. It's like you can just feel it, like
you can be good at it, but you can't be the expert at it.
So it's kind of that was kind of interesting for me. So things have changed, and as you know, you've very kindly spoken at our conferences. We've run conferences and events, and more and more our business shifted, and we took a bit of a pause in our business in 2019. My husband had some health issues, and we just kind of hunkered down a little bit and just focused on health. And he's fine, and it's all been brilliant. And of course, back in 2020, the beginning of 2020, I felt a little animal coming out of its burrow after hibernation, going, well, what's happening in the world? And I thought, oh, I know what I really want to do. It was something it's resonated for me for a long time. And that is about well-being in local community. So we didn't have many clients at that time because we'd actively been pursuing clients. We wanted to check my husband's recovery was absolutely tip top before we did anything. So I actually had some space, and I thought, I'm just going to go into my local community. It's about 3 miles away. It's called Ivy Bridge. It's on the edge of Dartmoor in Devon, and it's about 12,000 residents. And I thought, well, I'm just going to go in and see what's happening around well-being. And you know, I kind of thought I got something that I could share about well-being, because of course the Inside Out is pretty amazing, and you know, maybe I could share that. And so I gave myself 3 months just to explore well-being in my local community. And I guess that was back at the beginning of 2020, and I've explored it ever since. And what's since happened is we completely closed down our old business, and we started a social enterprise called Inner Compass Guide, and it's a community interest company. And our focus is around well-being, and we call it well-being listening. That's the vehicle we're using to share what we see as something that could be really powerful for our community. We're using well-being listening as a way of sharing in our community and sharing the inside out understanding. And, you know, 2 years ago, I remember it was 2020, it was New Year's Day. And I remember sitting down in our kitchen, having a cup of coffee with Stu and saying, I really want to do something about well-being in my community. I need to go and tell people that I want to do this. I have no idea where to start. Where do you think I should start? And he said, oh, well, there's an Ivy Bridge Facebook group. Why don't you start there? And I said, oh, it's a great idea. So I joined this group and I put out a message, and people were interested. And then I thought, I mean, this is the way I do things. And I'm not saying it's the way anybody should do things, but I tend to work one person at a time, and I love meeting people, and I'm so curious, and I just love people's lives. So it just made sense to me to go and visit people. There were loads of different community groups. I went to see the veterans group, Slimming World. I went to see mother and toddler groups, went to see the food bank. I went to see a karate club, went to see the Cubs. I just said, can I come and just see your group in action and just see what's going on? And I learned so much just from going to these groups. And then one of the biggest things I learned is that, oh my God, these people are actually engaged in the inside out understanding without even realizing it. Like, they're sharing well-being. Like, they just don't understand. They think it's their thing that they're doing that is creating the well-being in people. But actually what they're doing is they're creating a safe space where people's anxious and over revved up thinking is settling. And because their thinking is settling, they're having an experience of their own inbuilt resilience and well-being. And it just struck me that people didn't need another well-being group. It was just, I could support people, I could support these community leaders to understand what was going on so that they maybe felt better supported in what they were doing and resourced in what they were doing to support others. And that's, and of course, lockdown came, we all did stuff online. And that's where the idea for Wellbeing Listeners got created. Is Stu and I were thinking, how can we volunteer in our community over lockdown? This was the first lockdown. And I thought, well, we know this stuff. We know about wellbeing. Why don't we just put on a webinar and just say to people, come on a webinar and we'll share about wellbeing and listening. And then that grew into a month-long course. And then it grew into a 6-month course. And we're repeating that 6-month course again in October. And we've got people running community projects. And it's just been an evolving process. But I've just found it extraordinary, very humbling, actually, if I'm honest, just to see what is already going on. There's some extraordinary, beautiful people around. It's wonderful.
Well, I love it, Liz. And there's a couple of things I wanted to highlight. Like the thing that jumped out to me as I was listening, one of the things that jumped out to me was you said, I'm very curious. And so I just started exploring and going to where people were. Well, what you were doing is what I call getting their world. You're calibrating, you're getting their world and finding out what's going on. And one of the valuable things you saw, my whole take is that my job isn't to give people insights. My job is to help make it as easy as possible for them to have the insights that are already in a position to bubble up. Well, you calibrated and you saw, they're already doing that. They're creating insight-friendly spaces. They just don't know what's doing the heavy lifting there. That's so cool, because speaking to you as a coach, there's nothing more empowering for you as a coach than to realize what your clients have going for them. So it's incredibly powerful. But I also love the way that you've just followed your own inspiration and curiosity. One of the questions that Chris had was, allowing his business to develop organically rather than trying to impose a business strategy on it. And I think there are all kinds of things we can learn from reading about marketing or strategy, whatever it might be. There's a way in which our own inner guidance it really needs to be in the mix with this. But I wanted to kind of highlight those things because there's so much richness in what you're saying. Yeah,
and I've got a really great example of that, actually. So one of the people that came on our training and is an absolute one of my dearest friends now. She's our community connector here in Ivy Bridge, and she came on our 6-month program last year. And it's wonderful. We work together now in the community. And so we come up with ideas. And one of the ideas, so I'm going to give you two examples of ideas. And this is about our inner navigation system. So one of the ideas, we were just bouncing this idea around. We really wanted to engage with the socially isolated. So people that maybe find it very hard to connect and a bit lost in our community. And the idea started out like, let's maybe why don't we just do a coffee morning at the local library? We just thought we could do that. That's something fairly easy. And then we just had a bit of a laugh because we thought, well, it's kind of like a hard sell. Like if you're feeling like you've got no friends, why don't you come and other people who've got no friends? Yeah. So it was like, no, that's not kind of what we really want. That's not what it's about. And so we just came up with this idea of, well, there's so many great groups going on in Ivy Bridge. Why don't we have a coffee morning where we invite a group to come along to the coffee morning and make it interactive, and we all just have a go at something? And it might be that there's a connection then between someone who's looking for something to do, and then they go, I'll play table tennis then, or I'll join the local craft group. So that's what we did. So, and I want to show you some photographs in a minute of that, Jamie, because I just want to show you in a second, but I just want to finish this story first. And so it was kind of one of those things that it was like, okay, so what do we do now? So we obviously approached the library. And then Jessica, the community connector, said, I'm going to see if I can get some funding. And so she went to our local district councillors, and they've got a little pot of money. And each three of the district councillors of Ivy Bridge, each of them contributed. It was only we only got £200, but they each equally contributed, and they're all from different parties, to this little pot of money, so we could hire the venue. And then we just went ahead, and we'd planned it to go ahead when the lockdown finished, and of course the lockdown was extended. So then we had to hire another room because it was a bigger space. So it kind of blew our budget because we need people who socially distanced. We hadn't planned on that, but we did it, and it's been, and we just did it for 6 weeks, and we tried it out. And some weeks we got a lot of people, and some weeks we didn't get so many people, but we just tried it out. And then we're going to start it again in the autumn. And Jessica, who's much better at getting funding than I am, she's applied for some more funding. And this time we've got now close on £1,000. So we're now able to market it in our local magazines, and we're going to be able to pull up banners and things like that are going to get paid for. So that's just one example. So we just followed something, and it had energy, and you're testing it out, and does this feel right? And then there's another idea that we've had going on as well. And we thought,
just before you tell us that one, I just wanted to check, because you said you've set up a KIC, a community interest corporation. Is everything that you're doing funded by funding bodies rather than directly, or do you have a mix?
It's a mix. Yeah. It is a mix. And funnily enough, because my background is in business, I find that part of the mix easier than the funding. Right. I'm still learning the ropes there. So Jessica's been a godsend, because she's often the one that gets the money, and then we kind of work on the project together.
Right.
And then the second idea we came up with, and I still think this has got legs, but
sorry to interrupt again. Yeah. A good connection for you might be Simon Payne, who's in the group here today. He's doing some really, really innovative stuff with the Rebel Business School. Is Simon here at the moment? I'm just looking. Oh, he may not be on screen at the moment, but I'll connect you. Yeah, he is.
I'd love to connect. That if there's any resonance there, Simon, I'd love to connect. That'd be awesome.
He's doing stuff with this basically that involves funding bodies and all kinds of stuff, and I think it could be a really great connection.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to share my photographs here, just because I'm so proud of these. So here we go. So here's us. This is our so wellbeing, and here's the thing as well. The other thing we've got going on in this group, so it's called our community hub. And the people that have been on our month-long program, some of them come along to the community hub, and they just they're hanging out, and they're just listening to people. So the idea is that we've got some really good quality listeners, people who know not to get lost in stories, people who know how to listen for well-being and resilience. And it's just a really informal place. So we had art, we've had relaxation. Somebody brings their therapy dog. The table tennis group came along, and we a bit like when you're kids and you make the dining room table into a table tennis table. We made all these little table tennis tables. We had origami, and it's just been a little bit of kind of fun, quite frankly. So that was the idea that is the one idea. And then the second idea we've had is we'd love to engage local businesses more in what's going on. And I'm still stumped with this one. And we thought we'd try to have what we call a wellbeing week in October, where we were kind of hopefully going to get some kind of cross-fertilization between local businesses and community groups. And in my mind, it's a brilliant, like, local businesses want local customers. Here's some local customers, going into businesses, about stuff that's going on in the community. Well, it's like it's a no-brainer to me. But I've not had much success. I keep going into local businesses and trying to start conversations, but nothing's really, I'm waiting for the bite, and it's not quite there. So we were going to go for this October, and we we put it out there that we were going to go for it and didn't get much bite. So we said, okay, we're going to postpone that and we're going to try that again in the spring. So that's a really good example. It's like, Stu calls it, do you feel like you're pushing a donkey up a hill? And it was like, yeah, well, let's not push that donkey up a hill. Let's go where the energy is. And so my sense is it's going to happen, but it's not going to happen in the way I thought it was. So I'm just going to hold tight and see what goes on.
I so relate, Liz. And it's because you know me, right? I have a million ideas and they all seem like they'd be great ideas. But some of them, it's not the right time for them, or it's not the right idea, or that sort of thing. And I always want to go where the energy is. So if something's flying, if something's easy and fun and that sort of thing, that's where I want to go. Because I know that if it's easy and fun, that doesn't mean the whole project is going to be easy and fun, but at least gives you a kind of running start on the whole thing. Whereas I really like the metaphor of pushing a donkey up a hill. We don't want that. So yeah, I really, really like it. And Liz, in terms of kind of the theme, if you like, of this event, which is making your living from the inside out, how do you guys, I mean, I know you're early days with the Ivy Bridge project, but with the kick that you've set up, how do you guys get paid? One of the ways is through the funding you've been mentioning. How else?
Yeah, well, the main way that we get paid is through our training courses and coaching. So we've got the model that we've got is we run a free webinar, which we call our Wellbeing Listener Introduction. And we run those. Well, last year we probably ran about 8 of them, I think, over the course of the year. And then, so that's people don't pay for that. But if they want to come onto our month-long program, then we've got, it's called that's our Wellbeing Listener Foundation program. Then that's got a cost attached to it. And what we do, because we are a community interest company, we subsidize the Ivy Bridge. If someone lives or works in Ivy Bridge, then we'll subsidize their rate, or that some of them might get it for free, depending on what they're doing and their financial circumstances. But because it's online, we can charge 2 rates there.
Yeah.
And then the 6-month program is we call it the Community Listener Program. And that's for wellbeing listeners that want to run a project in their community. So again, we've got a price structure for that. And then the bit that we also run, which is the bit that I always wished I had when I was starting out in this understanding, we call it our facilitator training. So this is for people that have come across the inside out understanding and want to share the inside out understanding. And so what we do is we work alongside them and they support us in the work that we're doing. So they can shadow us. They can see how we do things. We ask them to facilitate groups. They take on mentoring responsibilities. But and this was another thing. I just want to say this because I think this is really important for me anyway. I thought everybody wanted to know about the inside out understanding. Like everybody wanted to know about the 3 principles, and I needed to sit them down and tell them about it, quite frankly, because it was.
Have you heard the good news?
But hey, not everybody does. Like I really get, and that's what the work in the community has taught me, is that it really struck me. Like there was one lady that came along to our table tennis group, for example, and at the end of it, she just said, she said, I've had such a great day today. She said, when I came along, I was just feeling really worried and I'd a lot going on in my mind. And she said, I've had such a laugh and I just feel great. And I said, great. Now, I never tell anybody about inside out or 3 principles, but I always do point to as best as I can. And I said, and it looks like it's a table tennis, but you know what, that's what you've got inside you. So I always kind of try and weave in a little bit of, what I feel is important for people to see for themselves. But it really just struck me like, I'm really interested in the 3 principles and inside out understanding. And some people are and want to teach it, but a lot of people just want to have a kind of good life, like a life without a lot of thinking and just hang out with their family and friends. And actually, that's what we're facilitating. And there are some people that would love to share this. Mm-hmm. And so we want to give people an opportunity to find their own way of sharing or articulating what we call the inside out understanding.
I love it, Liz, and it so chimes with my vision of a world where everyone already knows that they have this innate capacity within them. And that doesn't mean everyone wants to talk about it. I don't need for everyone in the world to be talking about this stuff. In fact, my vision is of a point where we're all, surplus to requirement because everyone already gets it. It's like, yeah, okay, professor, shut up. We get it. We understand that. And to me, that's what you're creating.
Yeah, well, I love that, because my sense is that, and what I love about having our wellbeing listeners as part of this community hub is they know what to listen out for, and they know what not to whip up in when they're engaging with somebody. And it's almost like, and it's that when you see these conversations happening, that it's the most natural, nourishing conversations in the world. They're not forced. Mm-hmm. They're not, it's just like talking about children or parents or pets, or like we're just having ordinary everyday conversations. Yeah. But we just kind of know, we just need to know what to listen out for, and kind of, as much as possible, redirect people back to what they've already got within them, even if we don't overtly tell them that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So listen, I'd love to take some questions from people. So I want to do two things. The first thing I want to do is to invite you all to join me in giving Liz a big round of applause. So just unmute yourself and let's give Liz a big round of applause. Thank you so much, Liz. I love what you're up to. But also, guys, what would you love to ask Liz? Because one of the things I love about Liz is she's a great model for just following her intuition and doing what makes sense to her. That's what led her into creating her coaching business and her work with schools. And it's what's led her into creating the project that she's told us about today. So what would you love to ask Liz? The other thing I want to ask you, Liz, is I know if I'm remembering correctly, at least at one point, you were talking about scaling this in such a way that other communities could use the same model. Is that still on the cards?
Definitely, yeah. It's you see, I get a little bit, I say torn, but I really don't want to produce a template or an ABC model, and that's not what this is about. But what I do get is that there are some things that we've learned that might be useful for other people when it comes to engaging in community. So that we've just refreshed our website, so it's much more about what we've been doing.
What's the URL if people want to go have a look at it?
Innercompassguide.com.
Innercompassguide.com.
And it's just between about to get tweaked. There's a few typos on there which are just about to get tweaked, and that's another thing. I would never have done that in the past.
Authenticity, Liz.
But it does. It's like I would always in the past I must get everything absolutely right before it goes out, and now it's like, no, get it out. These photos are great. We're just going to get it out, and we'll tweak it as and when we go along, and that's what we do. So innercompassguide.com is where you can find out a bit more about us. And I've completely forgotten what you asked me now, Jim.
I was asking about scaling it so other communities can learn from what you're
and that's the next phase now for us. We've started to collate what we've done and what we're doing, and we just, I don't know whether it's just going to be like a PDF that people can just download, or I don't know exactly. And it might be that evolves because we'll get feedback and we'll weave it in. But I would so advocate, if this inspires you at all in engaging in community. I mean, you can do this and run your business as well, but if you really, really, really want to share the inside out understanding, go and share it with a bunch of people that don't actually want to know about it, and kind of just kind of want to live their lives well. Because what I've found for me in the way that I share now is I keep stripping stuff out and making it more and more simple for me, and then in the way that I share it, and I don't get so caught up in doing it. Like I think Ian Watson said, look, there are no 3P police coming to arrest you. Yeah, there is really no right way to do it. Yeah. It's like and that's what I really see is when I just turn up and I'm present and I'm just kind of with another person. Well, that is I don't have to share anything other than be with that person. So yeah, in answer to your question, yes, that we are, that is the next stage now. We've refreshed the website. And we just want to engage. If anybody is interested in what we're up to, then we would really just, welcome those conversations. I've got to say, I went off social media a year ago and I've never been back on. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense to me at the moment. So you do actually have to email me and have conversations these days if you want to get hold of me.
Yeah, I've got your phone number, so I'll use that. I was just going to say, we're going to go to questions in a second, but I was just going to say, Liz, if you want to jump on a call and just brainstorm how to do that piece about getting the local businesses involved.
Oh my God, I would love it.
Yeah, let's you and me jump on a call. Just pop me a text and we'll do that, because I've got some ideas about that, without knowing anything about what your offer to them is. But I think I can probably help you see some stuff with that. So Morag has put her hand up. Go ahead, Morag.
Hello, hi Liz. Thank you for that. That was really, really interesting, and I love the sound of what you're doing. Sounds something that'll make a really big difference. But the thing that got me intrigued, that caused me to put my hand up there, was that whole thing about the change from being the person that needed to have things right and that place, to the just literally following your intuition and just going with the flow and doing what feels right, and that journey between the two. And I'm curious to know if there was a difference that made the difference, or if it was a slow evolution, or do you know, can you think of the point at which you kind of went from one to the other, or not?
Well, the thing that pops into my head as you say that is that probably the answer to your question is no, but I do remember when I sent out this was probably about 2 years ago now, I sent out the wrong Zoom link to everybody in my community to do a meeting. And it didn't bother me that I'd sent out the wrong link. And I went, oh, that's unusual, because I used to would have been gutted that I would look so unprofessional, and what would they think? This was that person wanting to get to know them, and she didn't even know her technology. And so it's kind of interesting. It's an interesting question, isn't it? And I guess the way that I would describe it is this. The more curious I've become about this part of me that is unchanging and is settled, or has clarity, maybe that's the language, the more curious I've become about that, I've noticed the less I seem to get embroiled in beating myself up about the things that I used to beat myself up in. I still do. But the biggest thing I've learned is that whenever I feel insecure or anxious or worried, and my big one is overwhelm, and nobody's going to like me. Like, those are my biggies. Whenever I feel those, at some point I go, oh, I'm looking for my well-being and peace of mind in the wrong direction. And it doesn't matter what it looks like those thoughts are telling me. I know that is my little nudge. I call it my compass in a compass, saying it's time to look back within. There's only one place I experience what it is to feel this sense of nourishment and peacefulness and gratitude and contentment. And that's when I put my attention within. Now, what a symptom of that is that I've noticed, a bit like with that Zoom call, that I sent out the wrong link to everybody in my community. A symptom of that is I've noticed that I tend not to beat myself up so much about things. And the last piece I'll say on this is, and it resonated a bit with what Jamie was saying before I came on, is when we ran our community listener program. That's a 6-month program last year. So it finished in May this year, April, May this year. I remember partway through that program thinking, geez, I should be paying these guys. I am learning so much. I was having so many insights. Like the difference between working alongside people, knowing that you're not an expert, but you're a fellow traveler. Sure, I've got a way of articulating it, and I might have things that I can share, but I was learning so much from these guys, learning so much about myself and my journey. And I kept on coming up against my thinking, and then it would occur to me, oh, I'm looking in the wrong direction. It's like, stop looking out there and look back within. And that's the biggest learning. Probably that's the bit that I'm learning at the moment in my journey is just keep looking back within. So I don't know if that helps, Morag, but that's what came to me.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. I loved that answer. Yeah.
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Morag. Thanks, Liz.
Thank you.
That was beautiful. I almost want to say that's a beautiful place to pause, but I want to get the other questions in as well. So Melissa, go ahead.
Hi, Liz. I had a question about you speaking with the school leaders. So did you go to the Board of Education and start there to get their go ahead, or did you go to individual schools?
Okay. Oh, Melissa, I'm trying to find you. Oh, there you are. I can see you now. Great. Melissa. So here's how it happened for me. Back when coaching wasn't well known about, which was about 2006, 2007 in the UK anyway. I think maybe in America it was better known. I was on this was obviously 3 principles. I was on an NLP course and I'd missed a session. So I had to join another group to catch up on my sessions that I'd missed. And it just occurred to me that I wanted to try and get into education. And there was somebody on this session who worked for, we've got local councils here that run the education. And I thought, oh, this person might have got an email address for the person I need to contact. So I said to her, can you tell me who I should contact in the council when it comes to education? And she said, oh, that would be me. So I said, oh, well, can I have your email address and can we meet for coffee? And we did. And this is how this is just an example of how I do things. I don't make contact to get something. I make contact and then I just stay in contact. It's like Jamie says about building relationship. That's a bit I love so much about what Jamie delivers and shares. When I have a contact with someone, I'm in relationship, like that's the relationship. It took probably a year of just having cups of coffee and catching up. And then suddenly she said, we're running a pilot coaching head teachers to see what this coaching thing is all about. Would you be one of the coaches? And I said, yes, please. Yeah. Now, since then, because we got into that, we had some sort of credibility. And because the coaching was deemed as effective and I built contacts, it just meant that I was able to almost replicate what I'd done initially, which is I would then go and meet other people for cups of coffee and talk about what we did. But that had almost like given me my way in. Yeah. So once I was in the world of education, it's much easier then to ask people to say, look, we're looking to do this. Who would I contact? And they make the introduction, and it's much easier to have that introduction. We haven't done anything in education for 2 years because of COVID, and people can't think about anything at the moment. But my sense is, in fact, Stu just met with the deputy head yesterday, and he's curious. So there just might be something that comes out of that. So for me, it's one person at a time, one conversation at a time, and just know that you plant a seed today and it might not bear fruit for a year, 2 years, who knows?
I love that answer, Liz, and I just want to draw people's attention to the two things that you have to have before someone will hire you. First of all, there has to be a high level of relationship. It's just got to be there. No one's going to hire a coach who they don't have a relationship with. That relationship needs to be developed. It doesn't have to take a long time, but it needs to involve time. So that has to be there. And then the other thing, there has to be a high level of perceived need or want or desire. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the woman that Liz was building relationship with, she may have had a good enough relationship with her to hire Liz 6 months earlier, but there wasn't an opportunity until they were running the coaching pilot. And then all of a sudden there was a relevant need or wanted desire. And who was there in front of her? Liz. So that's, regardless of the audience you're working with, the two things you have to have are relationship and a high level of perceived need, want, desire. Has to be there before they'll hire you. So I just wanted to mention that. I think it's really, really important.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd say, Melissa, if I didn't know anybody right now in education and I wanted to get into education, in the same way that I engaged in the community here, I just went out into the community and I met people. I didn't tell them that I thought they needed wellbeing training. I wanted to know what they thought about wellbeing. In the same way, I would, if I was thinking I'd like to offer something in schools around wellbeing, then I would find a connection of somebody I knew in a school and ask them to either introduce me to someone. And I would say, I just want to pick people's brains. I want to understand what's going on in schools at the moment around wellbeing. And so what happens there is, the more that you ask questions and people don't think you're trying to sell them something or you're using them to get somewhere, that you're building up relationship again. And actually what happens is you begin to change what you thought they needed because you begin to understand the situation better. So that's, if I didn't know anybody, that's maybe what the BBC taught me a lot is, often in the morning, it's like, okay, we're going to be doing a story about petrol stations. Find me a petrol station. You're thinking, oh, I don't know anybody. So you just get on the phone and you phone up people and you make connections. And that's basically what this is about, is you don't know. So you need to make the connections and find your way, you'll know people and just sort of find your way in.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Liz.
Great question, Melissa. We're going to take one last question and then we're going to do something else. So Tony, go ahead.
Hi, Liz. I love what you're doing. I'm curious as to whether you're doing anything with this in terms of wellbeing listening in the end of life / bereavement space, because it seems to me that there are a lot of people who could get a lot of benefit from your work in a way that is very sort of 3P centered.
Gosh, Tony, just that you saying that, I feel very moved and touched, Oh, I might cry.
You breathe, Liz Scott. You breathe.
I'm breathing too.
Yeah, you just breathe.
Yeah.
Well, we don't. We don't specifically. And it sounds like a beautiful idea. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Thanks, Tony. Great question. And thank you, Liz, for sharing your story and sharing yourself with us and sharing your wisdom with us. This has been absolutely beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Everyone, please unmute yourselves and give Liz a huge round of applause to say a big thank you. Thank you, Liz. That was being wonderful.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you so much. Thank you.